welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of the movie like the script. I'm one of the hosts, Bob Rose, at Thundergrunt Bob on all the relevant social medias. And right now, Jamie's going to introduce himself.
Hey there, I'm Jamie Nash. I am the writer of Save the Cat Writes for TV and the Save the Cat Beat Sheet Workbook. I'm also a screenwriter. You can find me on Twitter at Jamie_Nash. Yeah, did I say that right? Jamie_Nash. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay,
I found
Jimmy?
it.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant, and you can find me on Twitter at Jimmy R. George.
Are you sure?
Yeah, occasionally now.
Right. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Deadpool, the first one, not the one that's in theaters right now. But before we get into our talking points, we're going to go around and we're just going to say our thoughts, reactions, history, or anything we want to say about Deadpool. And who wants to start? I'll ask, who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Okay, Jimmy, go for it.
Well, I love the movie, but I'm really going to just talk about my anecdote is about Deadpool 2, but since we'll probably never do Deadpool 2, I'll just talk about it now. So I actually saw Deadpool 2 during the run of this show with Bob. It's one of the only movies I've seen in the theater with Bob. And
really?
Yes. Yeah, man, only a couple.
I guess you're right. Holy shit. Okay.
So it was an advanced screening. Now picture it, guys. The year is 2018. We were recording in person. The world was slightly better, slightly less shitty. There was no pandemic. People went to the movies. And when you posted something on social media, people actually saw it. And so I went to an advanced screening with Bob. And when I got home, there was no embargo or anything. No one told us we couldn't talk about it. But I guess when I said that I liked Deadpool 2 in a tweet, it was like one of the first public responses to the movie, which I had no idea. I was just like sharing what I thought. And Ryan Reynolds retweeted it. I didn't even know. People were like, I was like kind of walking away from Twitter and like people were messaging me, holy shit, dude, Ryan Reynolds retweeted your Deadpool 2 review. So it got like 1 million engagements. It got like 250,000 likes. It was like, it's definitely like the most insane post I've ever had. And so, and I literally was just, it's not even like a well thought out tweet. I just was like, yeah, I like Deadpool 2. It was cool. And I didn't dig up the original tweet, but yes, Ryan Reynolds retweeted my Deadpool 2 review after seeing it with Bob.
I remember because we got there like 5 minutes late.
Yes,
the movie was
forever to get there.
He had already Vanessa had already died.
Oh my gosh!
I think we like that. We missed. I saw Deadpool 2 like 5 times in theaters back then. That's how I used to go to the movies. I used to see movies like 5 times a week. But yeah, like that first time we watched it, we missed the whole opening.
God,
him blowing himself up and all that stuff. We missed everything.
But I still enjoyed it.
Oh no, totally enjoyed it. But I just remember us being insanely late.
Yes, which is definitely not our style. But anyway, so that's my Deadpool. That's my Deadpool thoughts.
Awesome, Jamie.
The film Guardians of the Galaxy.
I was asking when did Guardians of the Galaxy come out? Was that before
20 years ago today, I believe?
2014. 2014.
Yeah.
I'm saying that completely from memory.
No, I swear I saw someone on the day of this recording say today was the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, that's what
were you just asking Alexa if?
Yeah, I asked, and it said 2014.
I'm not cutting that out, by the way.
Yeah. No, I asked Alexa, and it was 2014, and then I had to jump on here in the middle of it. So, because I was kind of wondering, I didn't really have any. I didn't really have a history with Deadpool at all. My comics knowledge kind of ends like in 1990. Like it just kind of ends.
Yep. Right.
And so I have like a gap. And then I kind of came back to comics. I picked up like Sandman and things like that, but especially superhero comics. Most of the stuff that's happened after 1990, I don't know about. So I really didn't care about the character or have an interest in the character. I went and kind of saw this cold because everybody else was talking about it and going to see it. And I really liked it. It was right up my alley, humor wise, and kind of like some of the stuff I was trying to write, like way over the top and a little insane. So I enjoyed it a lot. That's about all I got for this. It's not a big in-depth thing.
All right, everybody. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great episode.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I've seen the other one. I've seen the second one. That's about all I got. So I didn't get retweeted by Ryan Reynolds or anything cool like that.
Well, we'll get retweeted for this episode by Ryan Reynolds, hopefully.
Actually, the second one, my only story with that is I remember we made a 48-hour film project and we got superhero and we did this really cool 48-hour film that had a lot of good jokes in it. And when I saw the second one, but for whatever reason, that 48, it was never quite technically finished. So we never really put it online like we put our other ones on because it had some technical issues that we never got around to fixing. And when I saw Deadpool 2, it had a lot of the same jokes that we had in our 48-hour film project. And I was a little pissed off. So I retweeted. I tweeted at Ryan. Yeah, I tweeted at Ryan Reynolds and nobody saw it. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So,
Jamie tried to bring him up on plagiarism charges.
Yeah, everybody was busy looking at Jimmy's tweet when I was like, "You stole my jokes." No, he didn't steal anything. Nobody saw our 48-hour film project except the 10 people.
I think I saw it.
The superhero one. It was.
I think I watched it on YouTube.
Okay.
After I didn't go to the thing, but
yeah, maybe. I don't think it's really. It might have been online for a very short period of time, but like I said,
I remember watching a superhero thing you made for 48 hours. So.
It was kind of like The Office. We like kind of mixed the Office with the League of Justice sort of thing. And
I saw that.
Yeah,
I don't remember it.
Yeah,
completely, but I saw it. I know I did.
You were the only one.
I was the guy.
You and Ryan Reynolds apparently.
Yeah.
Stole some jokes. No,
I like how I'm involved in both of your opening.
Yes.
Somehow
worlds collide.
I don't know. That was just me stretching because I really didn't have much.
Gotcha. No, it's okay.
I was like riffing.
I probably have a little bit too much to say. Like I wrote some thoughts down last night.
No, I love it.
Because okay, I really love these movies. Okay, the Deadpool movies, all three of them. I've seen the third one, but we're not talking about that at all, and we're not talking about 2. I was actually a fan in the 90s of Deadpool, but Jamie, I think that speaks to our ages because like he's a 90s construct, right?
Right.
Like so, Deadpool was a thing for me before Hollywood ever touched him, and everything. So that's my backstory with that. But I was gonna say, like, anyone who listens to this show knows that comedy movies, and it's maybe not so much because we haven't talked about it enough, but spoof movies are to me what like Aliens and Raiders might be to Jamie or Jimmy. Like, I mean, I love all those movies too, but like when it comes down to it, when I was a kid, spoof movies, the Zucker brothers, Mel Brooks, that was actually the thing I was obsessed with, and I always have been. And like, with the exception of Spielberg, that's what got me into film. Like, wow. I've said that. I've sort of said that a little bit. I've said Jurassic Park, Spielberg, but like, that's what I was obsessed with as a kid. So Deadpool kind of, not only was I a fan of the character, I feel like this harkens back to that for me. And that's the reason I love it so much. But what I wanted to say was that since this is my only podcast now, and this is the only place I can talk about really anything because I don't post stuff anywhere anymore. And I want to give Jamie a couple minutes to check his email. I figured I wanted to just say 2 things about Deadpool, and the response on Twitter this week has been insane. There's kind of a Rick and Mortyification of Deadpool fandom. Like, if you like Deadpool, there's a lot of people that hate it, and that I think that is absolutely fine. You should hate Deadpool. He's kind of a horny, annoying, Bugs Bunny-ish teenager asshole. That's appropriate. And also, he's part of 2 of the biggest cinema franchises of all time, part of Disney now. When people are shitting on them, I'd say shit on the movie, tear it apart, shit on the content. I'm all fine with that. It's punching up. Let it have its punches and everything. But what I see online a lot is people insulting people for finding value in this franchise. And that bothers me a lot. And I like that bothers me a lot, maybe on a personal level, and just also like it doesn't speak to like the dynamic nature of taste. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You can like something as dumb as Deadpool and also appreciate Akira Kurosawa. There's people have more than one shade of like, you know what I mean? Just because you hate it, and it's fine if you hate it. And I don't think I don't. You see a lot of people like post takedowns of Deadpool or something, and then somebody else like, you don't know how to have fun. I also don't like that person saying that. I'm like, you don't need to defend Deadpool. It's won. It has won. It is at the tippy top. It is owned by Disney. It is at the top of the box office. It doesn't need the defense of it. But I guess my point is just like, don't insult people's intelligence because they find value in something that makes them laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird that I ever have to say that because I'm thinking about the utopia of comedy movies in the 90s where we would just go and all laugh together and we wouldn't tear everybody down.
Yeah.
For meta humor, like you go and you watch Hot Shots, which is literally Top Gun, but it has a story, but it's referencing other movies. Like, and it was fine back then. I don't know why it's not okay now, and you're an idiot if you like it now, but apparently you are. And yeah, just don't insult people's intelligence. I think that's kind of not cool, but I'm fine with you taking complete like umbrage with the whole franchise and everything. And I'd say just know that if somebody likes Deadpool, that doesn't mean they want everything to be Deadpool. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's like this assumption that because somebody likes this stuff, they only want it to be this. And that's so not true. You know, just speaking for myself, like I definitely don't want everything to be Deadpool. I want Deadpool to be Deadpool, but I love a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I probably love the stuff that I see that all the other people who insult it love too. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I didn't want to drone on too long, so I tried to shorten everything I wrote. But it's just I see a lot of hate for anyone that's like finding value in Ryan Reynolds making jokes and spoofy jokes and stuff. And I'm like, God, what have we done that we've gotten here where you can't make fun of movies from other movies? That was like part of my childhood, right? Spaceballs, right? Would Spaceballs be met with this level of vitriol? I guess when John Hurt, who is a cameo from Aliens, has a chest burster and he says "not again." Are you mad about that? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's like this is kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's weird about it though, and might be why it draws their ire, is this one is like Spaceballs was not part of the Star Wars universe, but this is part of the Marvel universe.
This is part of it. It is.
Which is weird.
It's weird and it's a verifiable difference, and I think there's also some there's much more like an anti-corporate, anti-capitalist sentiment floating around, and I think all of that is valid. Like, I'm not defending this. I'm not defending it or anything. I'm just trying to defend people who enjoy it, because a lot of people enjoy it.
Sure.
And I don't think you should call them idiots. Not you guys. Not you guys. I'm just saying, I saw so many people attacking other people for enjoying it. I was like, what are you doing here? This is nuts. God, let them enjoy this. Like, I mean, you can shit on it on your feed. I'm not telling you not to post. Just don't insult people's intelligence. That's all. And that's my little corner of the world about Deadpool and my enjoyment of Deadpool, because I really enjoy these movies too. So I take a little bit of offense to it. I'm like, so wait, I'm a complete moron because I find this funny, but I can't understand anything else. Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I'm smart, but you know, I'm sure a lot of listeners are like, I'm gonna fast forward Bob's.
No, hell no.
Yeah,
that's probably going to be the best part of the episode, right?
Ryan Reynolds will probably retweet that.
Yeah, Bob Rose's impassioned response to Deadpool. I think, yeah, I just wanted to defend people that are getting some value out of it. That's all. Okay, Jamie, who wrote this shit?
Sorry. Again, I was looking up something else for later. I'll explain.
That's why I
talking,
thought.
I'll explain
talking
later.
to Alexa.
I was talking to Alexa. I'm doing my research while you're working. So who wrote this? Who did write this?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Yeah, it's funny because I clicked on Rhett Reese and now I forgot the other guy's name.
Paul Wernick.
Paul Wernick. So they were the Zombieland guys. Am I correct? Is that
Yes, you are
that's who
correct.
they are?
Yeah.
And this is a script that had a long history, and I don't. This is the research I should have done. I didn't have time to do. I wish you would have talked for longer because I would have asked Alexa to tell me.
All
right,
Jamie's
all right.
doing his legwork while both
I
of
would've
us
said-
are talking.
I would have said, Alexa, tell me the long history of the Deadpool production. But you guys didn't give me time to let.
Sorry.
Alexa do that.
We're also
Instead-
just anyone listening. We're
Yeah.
kind of rusty because we haven't done it for a month, right? It's been a month
Yeah.
since we've done it. So
So at this point, I would ask everyone to pause and ask your own Alexa for the long history. We'll wait.
do you want me to say a
yeah.
little history, Jamie?
Yeah, that's it. If you
I mean,
don't mind.
I'll
jump
say
in.
the obvious history that kind of the movie a little bit Deadpool 1 and 2 comment on, right? Is the history is that Ryan Reynolds has actually played Deadpool, 4 times, not 3, 4 times, because X-Men Origins Wolverine, probably maybe the worst received movie in the entire franchise, completely changed the character of Deadpool. They took his mouth away, made him hideous looking. It was just a complete disaster. The movie's bad by itself and audiences didn't respond to it, but if you were a Deadpool fan, I remember seeing X-Men Origins Wolverine. It was really like, what the hell is this? Like, it because at the beginning of the movie, Ryan Reynolds kinda almost was Deadpool. It was like a little splash of it, but then they just threw it in the trash, right? And so after that, I know that Ryan Reynolds spent he spent the next few years pushing the studio to do a proper Deadpool movie, and nothing was moving. And also, where's the impetus from the money men to do something when that movie failed, right? Eventually, they made that teaser. Do you guys remember the CGI teaser for Deadpool?
I do.
Thing, and it got quote unquote leaked on the internet. Now, nobody knows who actually did it, but at this point, I feel like Ryan Reynolds has admitted he did it. he leaked the footage so that the fans would have an outcry to get the movie greenlit, and that's what you can still watch the Deadpool teaser, which is basically a scene from the movie, on YouTube, and that is that's how we got here. That's how they were able to do the movie, is basically an internet leak, which is kind of fitting.
Very
For the movie itself, is that an internet leak caused this to actually exist, and I think through Ryan Reynolds' own push. This is, like, if you love it or hate it, this is kind of one person's willpower to get this to exist.
I love that.
Yeah, it really was. So that's what I know on the surface. I didn't do my Alexa research that Jamie also didn't do. So but the movies both Deadpool 1 and 2 comment on this. The first one, you see the action figure of the original Deadpool.
Yeah.
And then the second one, he literally kills that Deadpool at the end of the movie. Remember? Yeah.
I do.
Right. So like the movies comment on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So looking at Rhett Reese's IMDb, and not just assuming that most of these are going to be co-written, but not, so it's an assumption because I can't see it on the IMDb without clicking on both and doing my work. So the funny thing is the first credit on here, actually, I don't know. Hold on. There's a see all, but the first credit cracks me up. Oh, I'm wrong. It's not the first. Oh, I see why. I'll explain that in a second. Because they have a lot of TV credits before they did Zombieland. And if I remember correctly, Zombieland was originally a TV pilot.
It was a
series.
TV pilot. Yeah.
And it actually became one on Amazon Prime that was really bad many years later. They did like around the time when I optioned stuff to Amazon Prime, when they had this kind of crowdsourced, really weird release of their Amazon Prime-ness. They had a Zombieland show that was really, really bad. It was like, have you ever seen this?
This pre-Walking
I didn't
Dead?
even know that existed.
It was pre-Walking Dead. So I don't know. There was like a show with, you might remember the first iteration of Amazon Prime. This isn't
Yes.
about that.
I do.
But
Yeah.
when like John Goodman had that politics show and stuff
Yes.
like that, there was some weird shows. Right around that time, they would release pilots and just be like, here's a pilot, check it out. You know, maybe this will be our new show. And they had a Zombieland one, and it was not good. It was just,
I don't
It-
even remember that existing, man.
it seems super cheap. Probably the only reason I remember it is because I was heavily entrenched in that world at the time. They had optioned two of my things for development through their crowdsourced kind of stuff, and then they went WGA, and it actually, that first iteration of Amazon was what got me in the WGA after years of doing independent stuff. I had to join the WGA in order for
wow.
my sale to kind of continue. So that actually got me in. It was a script called For Sale by Superhero, which there was a movie very similar that came out a couple years ago. I mean, I think Ryan Reynolds stole it again, and he's and then I had another script called The Detourist, and they optioned both, and they hired me to do rewrites, and that's how I got in the WGA. But anyway, so they did do a Zombieland TV show like a few years after the movies. Again, not good. It almost looked like,
Did they write it?
I don't think so. I think it was just like something that they had in development and stuff like that. They were, they weren't even attached. It was like a half-hour comedy pilot or something like that. It's probably out there somewhere.
Man.
I can't even remember it, to be honest, but it was really just.
No, here it is. It's 2013.
Okay.
The series.
When I say it was bad, it was just kind of cheap. It was just like, it just looked like something like we would have done on no budget here, like a 48-hour film project or something like that.
Gotcha.
There was just something about it that looked like it was quick and dirty and like, we'll just do the Zombieland thing and throw it up. And if it's a big hit, then we'll make a show out of it or something. But nobody watched it. But the one that I saw before that kind of cracked me up was the Joe Schmo show. I can't even say that. The Joe Schmo show. Do you remember the Joe Schmo show?
I do.
No.
Yeah, I do.
So this show was, to me, it was, and I don't know what year they wrote on it. Like it says 2003 to 2013, 28 episodes. I only remember like 2 seasons of it. So I'm not sure if there was like a 2003 season and a 2013 season or something. But the interesting thing about that show, it was a reality show where one person wasn't in on it and everybody else was in on it. So it was basically a practical joke on one person for a whole series. And it was supposed to look like Big Brother. Now, it's interesting for 2 reasons. One, it's the first place I ever saw Kristen Wiig. She was in it in the first season, and she played almost like a dramatic character. She wasn't that wacky. She was kind
I
of
remember this. Yeah.
She was kind of like the serious character in it. And the second reason that it was interesting is all the people playing the practical joke on the guy kind of started to feel bad as the season went on, and they kind of like, you could tell they kind of changed the way they approached the episode, because it was just they started to feel mean, and I don't know, it got really weird.
It was
awkward.
mean. It was a mean show.
It was a mean show, in that they were playing the joke on this one guy and trying to make him look a fool. But he was such a nice, earnest guy that by the end of it, like, they all were almost in tears when they had to break the news that it wasn't real and they weren't really his friends and stuff like that. And it was kind of like this sad show. Anyway,
I don't want to go on a tangent on this, but if you ever look up a movie called Windy City Heat,
okay,
if you guys like, or any listeners, it's a Bobcat Goldthwait movie where they trick this one guy into thinking he's starring in an action film when actually it's a practical joke on this one guy. Yeah. It's sadly incredibly funny.
Okay.
But it's kind of like the Joe Schmo show, but it's got Bobcat Goldthwait's kind of sadistic sense of humor along with it. It's mean.
Yeah.
And it's not ever been released for a reason, but it's funny.
So,
it's really funny.
So then anyway, to fast forward, they did Zombieland. They became big sensations. They did G.I. Joe Retaliation. They probably coming off of Zombieland.
The superior G.I. Joe movie, if I may say.
There you go. I don't know. It probably had. I have a lot of old GI Joe comic books featuring Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes for
In your
sale
garage?
in my garage. I will sell them. I have like the first 20 issues of GI Joe, the comic book. Excellent stuff, including the issue of Snake Eyes that has no dialogue. Very popular.
Oh,
Okay, a very popular issue. So if you want to buy that, just let me know. Reach out to me. And I also have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle
right,
number
the
2
yeah,
or
right.
whatever.
love that you heard that.
Yeah. So so I have no Deadpool comics, unfortunately.
No.
So anyway, then they ended up doing Deadpool 2, and they continue to be. It's funny.
They're kind of doing Netflix and
they're doing Netflix.
too.
They're big time.
Yeah.
They're big time guys. So
Yeah.
I gave them their just due. We can move on from those two famous
I
knuckleheads.
I think only, if I'm correct, I think only one of them
think
worked on Deadpool and Wolverine.
Oh, really?
I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong there.
I'll click
No,
on
no,
the-
they're both there. Never mind.
Let me ask Alexa.
Don't ask Alexa. Okay.
Alexa, no.
Well, and real quick, box office for Deadpool 1.
Box office for Deadpool 1 was domestically, it was 363 million. Internationally, 419. I'm kind of surprised that it was that high internationally just because of the comedy and stuff. But for a grand total of 782 million bucks.
That's pretty amazing for a comedy, right?
Yeah, I think it was the R-rated record at the time, and now it's been broken by the new movie. Well, at least the opening has. The opening weekend has been broken by the new movie.
Wow. Yeah, well, I think that by double almost, right?
Yeah, for R-rated movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that's, I mean, for a comedy movie, that for a character that nobody was really into, that's nuts how this blew up. Okay, you guys want to talk about the credit sequence and credit sequences in general?
Yeah. So when I was watching this on this rewatch, I noticed the credit sequence, and it's really funny and has a lot of gags. And I thought it might be useful to talk about credit sequences in screenplays. So, this one has that thing where it says, it has like the writers, the real heroes, and it has voiceover, and it's telling story through the credit sequence. It has kind of a slow motion thing with the bullets in the air and things like that. It kind of is a good
the car
opening
crash.
It's the car crash. It's the car crash, and it's a good opening image. Jimmy, where do you stand on credit sequences in screenplays?
I love them. I love writing them. I encourage people to do that. I think it's a great way to use this one as an example. It is a perfect way to establish tone, genre and tone. And my favorite example is The Fugitive. It's actually, hopefully one day we'll get to do that. The Fugitive screenplay, the credits are written, the individual titles are written into the script, and it tells a story within the credit sequence. And then when the credit sequence is over, it almost functions like a cold open, even though it's not a horror story. And when the credit sequence is over, we know everything we need to know about the movie and the story world, and very little has been said. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I was really surprised to look at the script for this. There's 2 versions of the script. And Jamie, did you have something to say about this script in general and its lacking of the credits?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. It's interesting that it is not in the actual script, just because it is full of good jokes and stuff like that. So it is kind of a character, or not a character moment, but a story moment. Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say it was a placeholder during editing.
Okay,
that's it. I think, and I don't know what it was supposed to be in the place of the credits. I think the credits they actually typed in were the jokes just for them. And it ended up staying in the movie because I think they were supposed to be real credits.
I got
okay.
And the joke was, I think the original joke was just, what are we looking at instead? Right. But they left they thought that the jokes that they made for themselves as placeholders were good enough to just leave in.
Can you think of any credit sequence that, the credit so my note here is the credit sequence breaks the fourth wall.
Instantly. Yeah.
instantly. And
Ryan
can you
Reynolds is
think
on a magazine cover in the
yeah,
opening
can
credits,
you
right?
think of another movie where the credits themselves, the actual credits break the fourth wall? Like,
I
I
mean,
can't
I,
think
I there's got to be like 90s. Well, I mean, Spaceballs.
Spaceballs does,
I mean,
yeah,
spoof
yeah.
movies in general.
So, that's a good point.
We had
It
never done
takes
a
its
proper spoof
I
movie on this
know,
show. Wayne's
Right.
I
World
know.
brushes against it,
Yeah,
but
no,
we've
no,
never
we
done like
haven't
Airplane or anything.
we haven't, uh yeah, Young
Air,
Frankenstein is on the list.
Airplane would count with the Jaws opening,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? I mean, that's breaking the fourth wall.
I
Yeah,
mean, Naked
totally.
Gun has a great. They have that thing
Right.
where
The,
the
the
Yeah.
first person view of the police.
siren or
Yeah,
yeah.
Jamie, do you write credit sequences into your scripts?
So what I was going to say about it is I'm a little 50-50. I'm not as in favor of it as you, but I'm not against it either. I think if you have a good one and it can move the plot forward and it can somehow express tone like I think this one would be a good one to write in a script. Like I think because it would instantly put people in a headspace. Like I understand what this is, and it would set the tone immediately. I think it would be a really good one to write in a script.
It sets the Batman scale tone pretty obviously.
It does.
Yes,
It sets
yeah.
the tone. I see. The one thing I did want to say was, so if you have a good one and it looks good on the page somehow, I'd say put it in. I see a lot of people thinking almost like they have to do it. And it's just like
Oh,
they
yeah.
write a scene and then they just put credit sequence.
Titles. Yeah. I never do that.
And then they do something else. And that's kind of what I wanted to argue against. I'm like,
Okay.
if you have like a really creative idea in mind, if you have a good one like this is the time to do it. You know, that's when you do it, is when you have some really good jokes that'll land and it sets the tone. And it just feels like part of the movie. And it feels like something only a writer would come up with. That's when you do it. Otherwise, I'm usually a more person like leave it out. Like
You leave it out. Okay.
Yeah, don't do it. I've done it in comedies, things like this, and then I've stayed away from it in a lot of other scripts as well.
Okay.
With a comedy like this too, anywhere you can shove jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Why not write it? Why not write it into it? Right? It's every crevice you fill with a joke.
Yeah, we have we have a talking point later with the types of jokes, and I almost thought about just doing the opening credits and seeing how many of those are in the credits.
When I saw that list, I was like, I thought beyond the opening credits, but I was like, between the opening credits and just the opening sequence,
there's probably
all of them.
Yeah, it probably covers everything. Also, I was gonna say, I know you guys haven't seen it, and I'm not gonna say anything about it, but I feel like that this credit sequence being kind of like a miracle after the fact of writing it, you know, and in production. By the time they get to the third movie, they're doing like the opening credit sequence of the third movie is elaborately a joke on purpose. Definitely has to be in the script. You know what I mean? Like they almost took their what happened here and what worked and then constructed it more into the movies as they went.
I love that.
You know,
that's great.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
No, this makes me think of, Bob, how you try to explain to people. That's why, like, we say the final edit of the script is the movie. Because,
yeah, right.
Like, this is writing, and they wrote it in post-production, you know, like, and if we just go by what's on the shooting script, then this doesn't even qualify, you know, it's not even a part of the discussion.
And on that thought too, the writers were Ryan Reynolds paid out of pocket to have both the writers on set at all times to add stuff in the moment.
That's awesome.
New ideas and everything, and that stuff wouldn't be in the shooting script.
Right.
So if we once again, if we just talked about the shooting script, it you know, like how many jokes in the movie wouldn't qualify, right?
Yeah. No, and I even some of them that are gonna come up later, the script version is different. It's like the same joke, but they refined it.
They refined it differently.
Yeah.
One day we might do like Step Brothers or something, like a truly like, you know, improv comedy.
It would be an interesting thing to do. Yeah.
Like where they were literally yelling jokes at each other on set to say, where it's like when the script doesn't matter.
Yeah, I remember when we did Groundhog Day, there was a quote from Harold Ramis of how he said, you know, they come to the set and they basically say the script is the worst version it could ever be. The jokes are the worst version of them they could ever be, and they come ready with 7, 8, 9 alt jokes ready for the scene. So it's interesting. They're not even on the page, but they're ready there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we did any Bill Murray movie feels like that because I think he just throws out the script and kind of does his own thing. You know?
I wanted
Right.
to say one more thing because I didn't put it in here, but since we're on the fourth wall, and I know Bob, you said you had some things to talk about the fourth wall.
I just had a quote. I had a quote I found by Ryan Reynolds.
The thing I want to say, we've done a couple movies with fourth wall breaks, specifically Wayne's World, and one thing I think from studying these is, for me, fourth wall breaks are the gateway gimmick to all gimmicks. Like, if you land a fourth wall break right from the start, you do it first, and then you keep it consistent, the audience is ready and willing to play in the sandbox with all the gimmicks, right? Like, it is the gimmick that absolves all the other gimmicks. Like, I probably missed a bunch, but Deadpool has fourth wall breaks. It has fourth wall breaks within fourth wall breaks and makes jokes out of it. It has nonlinear structure. It has a slow motion sequence, and it has additional highlighted slow motion moments. It has voiceover from multiple characters. There's a whole voiceover with Francis explaining what he's going to do with Wade. It's got magical realism, multiple animated hallucinations from Wade. It's got fast forwarding through a flashback. So, and I think the reason it works above, besides the fact that that's the whole point of the character, is that fourth wall break, starting out with the credits being a fourth wall break. It just tells you like all bets are off, and this is just going to be one gimmick after another. So I think if you want to have a movie full with all these gimmicks, try starting with a fourth wall break and keeping that consistent, because I think it's sort of like the anchor for all. It holds it all together.
Something that I mean, rewatching it for this, but I've seen the movie so many times. Establishing that fourth wall break at the beginning will sell something as maybe kind of weird and off-putting as like the bullets being numbered.
Yes,
The bullets having numbers on them, it's only for our benefit, but it's obviously, why would that happen?
right.
But you
But it's
just
perfect.
but you just let it flow past you for the style factor and for
Mhm.
the joke, because it's already been established. Like,
Right.
yeah, like in another movie, you go, why would they have numbers?
Yeah,
on them?
you're never taken out because
Yeah,
now
yeah.
you know what you're in for, and the audience
Right.
goes with it. Yes.
Like you're not
That's
questioning.
very difficult to do. And
Yes,
the
for
fourth
sure.
wall break, in my opinion, is why it works. So
Exactly.
yeah.
The quote that I had by Reynolds was the following. It's about breaking the fourth wall. I think Deadpool's coming along at the right time because it's speaking to that generation that has seen all these comic book films and enjoyed them all. It's speaking to them as though the guy in the red suit is one of them. It's like watching a DVD commentary by someone who's got some pop culture savvy and is kind of funny and a little obnoxious and is saying the things you wouldn't say.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
perfect description.
And I feel like that quote is established in the credit sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Like right there,
Yeah.
right? Like everything he's saying right there.
You
The
feel that.
The DVD commentary is in the credit sequence, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, Jamie.
Yeah, so I can introduce this next topic since
Yeah, go for
it's weird and complicated. It's not really that complicated, but so one thing that struck me while I was watching this movie, and I've been thinking a lot about Airplane and Naked Gun and movies like that recently for various reasons, was that Airplane and Naked Gun especially, they do a thing, and I'll use Airplane as the best example because Airplane actually, if I remember correctly, they bought the rights to the movie they kind of spoofed, like
Airport 77.
Yeah, I think they actually bought like the rights to it because or maybe they bought the book rights or something like that, because they actually used lines of dialogue from that movie and things like that, and then they layered their spoof movie on top of it, like directly on top of it. Naked Gun does a similar thing. I think Naked Gun actually borrowed from a lot of things. They didn't purchase any, I don't think, or option any, but they do lay out like a real movie beneath the spoof movie. This movie obviously does the same thing, even a little more. Like, if this was on the tonometer, it would probably be a little more towards the serious movie than the Airplane and Naked Gun. You know, it'd be a couple ticks. Like, there are moments where you actually are watching an action movie. You know what I mean? You are literally watching an action movie and getting action thrills out of it. It doesn't go on for too long. They usually cut it short, or they throw a joke in or something like that. But you're actually watching an action movie at various times.
You have to write a real movie first and then add the comedy later.
What's the Judd Apatow quote that we talk about?
Yeah, the Judd Apatow, what he makes his new writers do, like for Bridesmaids, or when Seth Rogen wrote for him in the early days and things like that, he would force them to write the drama first, make the drama work without the jokes. Like he wants them to write the drama first and make that work before the jokes come in.
I would point out too that the reason that the 90s was like kind of 70s, 80s, and 90s for spoof movies was amazing, and the reason they fell out in the 2000s was because of those like movies. Mm-hmm. Remember Disaster Movie, Epic Movie, all those awful spoof movies that ruined the genre. They didn't bother making a movie underneath.
That
was the problem with those.
That's my exact point for this topic.
I'm sorry, Jamie, if I stepped on that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's fine for you to say it. Because in fact, when I first started to write screenplays, I wanted to be a comedy writer. And one of the first things that got any attention that I wrote, and the thing I was trying to look up actually while you were talking, I was trying to find my old script. The first thing that got it, and I couldn't find it, so it was really heartbreaking. Maybe it's gone forever. But it had one of those titles like, don't do Juice in the Hood because blah blah blah. It was one of those, but it was basically spoofing, and somebody else did this later. Like somebody did it, but it's basically spoofing all the '90s independent movies. So it spoofed like, and it was me and a co-writer, Jim Cholinsky. We were comedy writers, and we very liberally used independent movies as our thing we were spoofing. So it had like
Tarantino stuff and all
that. It had
like,
Tarantino stuff. It had American Beauty. That's where it got a little weird. Being John Malkovich, Memento. It had all these different things like that were kind of a combination. And it was a spoof movie. And the reason it was the first one to get attention, we wrote Harvey Keitel in it as himself, because he was in like all those movies.
Right.
So, and we sent it to his company, and they were the ones interested in it. They were like, we like this for Harvey. Their company was called the Goat Singers. And they were the only people interested in the script. It was like my first, it was my first like script that went out to somebody, and it was like, Harvey Keitel wants to be in our movie. I mean, it was
playing himself.
Yeah. And that was like, this is how Tarantino got started. I was like, I'm going to be the comedy Tarantino. By the way, we never met Harvey Keitel or anything. It was like the guy who works for his company,
Right.
And it never went anywhere. But it had the problem that you just said.
So cool.
Yeah, it had the problem you just said, is that it was just like a bunch of these weird scenes and gags, but it didn't have the movie underneath it. Like I didn't understand why it had to have the movie underneath it. And quite honestly, I still don't know the why it has to have the movie underneath it, but I know it does.
I was going to say, like, I know that you and me have been bringing up spoof movies this whole podcast so far, but like there is a marked difference between like Naked Gun, Hot Shots, and then Deadpool. Like Hot Shots, it is Top Gun, and there is an attempt to have an emotional core between the two leads. Right. And it is treated like a real movie.
Spaceballs is like a real
Spaceballs is too. But I'd argue, as someone who has seen those movies 9,000 times, that it's not going for any type of dramatic feeling ever in those movies. It's layering it on top of the movie, on the one they're making fun of, but it's like Robin Hood Men in Tights is not actually going for any real emotional dramatic feeling coming from the audience. Whereas I'd argue Deadpool in all three of its movies are going for that.
Yes.
You're supposed to feel things for Deadpool.
There's sincerity there.
There is sincerity, actual drama, actual emotion being layered in. So that's the difference.
No,
and that's kind of why I was saying what I was said at the beginning. I was like, it's a real movie. It's even more real than the spoof movies you used to have, and you didn't have a problem with them. Like,
right. It's
like,
interesting because like there is stuff that it does that I'll go back to even the first movie I made myself. I made this kind of, it wasn't a spoof, but it feels like a spoof, called Two Front Teeth. It was a horror movie that I made. Like that was the reason I got into stuff. I
It's
wanted
available to stream, right?
available. Well, it's not, but it's going to come out on DVD this
There it is.
Christmas.
Okay.
And it's just it's really schlocky and bad, and it is what it is. And it'll be out. But I remember when I watched this, I remember, oh, okay, that was what I was trying to do too. Like I was kind of getting in my head, because there's that scene where he's about to kill the guy, and that speech comes up. A hero only needs
4 moments.
Yeah. And so back in the day when I didn't know anything about this or wasn't analyzing, it was kind of the same thing. Like I realized this is the moment where the character arc happens. This is the moment, and I have to do it just like the real movie does,
right?
To subvert it. Yeah. And to get to that point, you have to do all the moments, or otherwise it doesn't, you can't just pull that out, or it just feels like this weird random mismatch. You literally have to construct it. Like the way I see it is, this is a real movie, but somehow this wild man Deadpool ended up in it, and he's doing his own thing. But it would be a real movie if he wasn't the main character. And I feel like that's what this movie's kind of doing. And it's
like him dealing with his own pain and trauma through breaking the fourth wall, instead of other ways a dramatic movie would do it.
Yeah. But I definitely think spoof movies, like I can't think of a good spoof movie. I mean, you might be able to go back to like Kentucky Fried Movie, which is like vignettes or something like that. It's
that's more
an
of an
anthology
movie.
Yeah. But I can't think of a good one that doesn't, and you wouldn't think Airplane or Naked Gun would need a real movie underneath it, because it's so funny. They're stuffed full of jokes. There's like a joke a second in those movies, and I can watch Naked Gun today, and it's a movie, I hate this term, but it holds up. It is like, you are impressed by just how many jokes there are and how good the quality of the jokes are in that movie.
You have to pay attention to see all the jokes.
You have to pay attention.
Look away.
It's really impressive, like how good the jokes are. You wouldn't think that movie would need to like have the love story work, even as absurd as it is, like them walking out of Platoon and laughing and all that stuff. As absurd as that is, they do the love story. It's just,
I'm laughing right now at a joke I'm not even watching. There you go.
It's like one of the, in my opinion, it's one of the greatest jokes of all time. Like I could pick some jokes from Naked Gun and Airplane too, that are like, to me, I mean, there's even stupid ones like when he says bingo and pulls out a bingo card or something. Like, to me, that's the most genius joke of all time. But
I think that's what like the Zaz team excelled at, right? Is doing exactly what you're saying they're doing.
They did. But anyway, it's just a fascinating observation that if you're making a comedy, and I'm not even sure 100% why, though I have my inklings of why, the only ones that work are the ones that do all the work, but then layer on top the funny stuff. But they still do all the work underneath it. They still all make sense. The math is still there. And even though you might not cry at the final scene when, I don't know, he flies the airplane in an airplane or something like that, and he gets over his fear of flying or whatever, even though your emotions aren't stirred in the way you're supposed to be, like all the work that would go into a real movie doing that is actually in there. And it seems like it has to be for the comedy to work. I think
it works in a way like, while that's not a joke, their emotional arc between the two leads falling in love in Airplane is not a total joke.
Right.
But the audience knows that it's playing off of something else that exists. It's playing off the genre. It's almost like saying, to do this kind of movie right, to do Airplane right or to do Deadpool right, you need to be able to make normal stuff first so that you can actually make the jokes about it. Like if you're an incompetent filmmaker, you can't make fun of film making.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's why the audience goes with it and it works. It's because they're like, oh, these people could make a real movie.
Right.
But they've decided to make jokes about movie making.
Yeah. Because I think in lesser hands, this movie wouldn't take its plot seriously. And you just kind of say, I'm not even paying attention to that because it's ridiculous.
Right. Right.
But it doesn't do that. It like, it has a real plot and a real story and all that stuff's real. But then it has all these jokes and it makes fun of itself on top of it. So It's really interesting in that way, and I think spoof movies that work.
Movies on this podcast that we've done that I think you could add into this category would be Wayne's World or Gremlins.
Yep, Wayne's World, definitely.
I feel like Joe Dante movies fit here a little bit. Like they could easily become the complete spoofs, but they have real an undercurrent of drama and character arcs and everything. You know what I mean? Like you could just make it a bunch of monsters going and doing wacky jokes, because there's fourth wall breaks a little bit in Gremlins, right?
And there probably are Gremlins ripoffs that sort of do that.
Right. They don't care about that. So.
I haven't seen Ghoulies in a while, but maybe that doesn't.
It actually, Ghoulies does try to do that. I'm not saying it doesn't well, but
I don't even remember Ghoulies. I was like, Critters is too good. I went pick on Critters, so I picked on Ghoulies because I didn't remember.
I think it speaks to genre expectations, right? Like if we made a list of a superhero movie set of expectations, I bet you this checks all of those boxes, right? Like the superhero's journey, and like genre is a flavor. It's a flavor, and the gimmicks are a flavor delivery system, right? It's got. This is still if Mexican food or Tex-Mex American Mexican food is superhero movie, this still has the beans, the cheese, and the meat, right? And it still tastes familiar.
Here's
but it's got wacky sauce.
It's got weird sauce. It's got some weird gordita / taco thing holding.
Another weird thing about this movie is, and I think Young Frankenstein might be a little like this, as opposed to Airplane and Naked Gun. But I think Deadpool, the movie itself, if you pull Deadpool out, is a serious movie. Like if you pull, he's the wacky thing.
You mean if you pull his personality out?
If you pull his personality,
make him a guy.
If you put the old Deadpool from the previous movie in there, this is a serious movie. But when you drop the Deadpool bomb in it, like this fourth wall commenting Bugs Bunny-esque character, that's what makes it funny. But everybody else is in a serious movie.
Yep.
Yes, they're not,
especially Francis.
Yeah.
Right. The villain doesn't want to be in the movie Deadpool at all.
Right.
Like actively hates that he is in the movie Deadpool.
I always found
this makes me want to do Last Action Hero so bad.
We'll get to it one day.
We should do that.
We'll get to it.
But I think I think Young Frankenstein, to an extent, it does that with all its characters. It's like a serious movie that they drop. They drop all these characters into a real Frankenstein movie, but the characters are all a little wacky, and it just screws up the movie in some ways. It's like, but the world is kind of the same as those old Frankenstein movies. It's not like Airplane or Naked Gun, where the whole world is like a Naked Gun when they had the blooper reel and a tiger eats the outfielder. You know what I mean? It's not. That's a wacky world. Like that doesn't happen in Young Frankenstein. It's the characters.
It's almost like what The Simpsons does too. The Simpsons is a wacky world, right? Where everything is kind of crooked. Like the signs are crooked, businesses are crooked, and everyone's kind of broken.
By the way, the blooper reel and Naked Gun, my second favorite joke of all time. It's like that bloop. When they say, let's take a look at some
How
of these
about
bloopers.
that?
How about that? Guys,
I was also going to say,
decapitated.
Real quick on the point I made earlier, when the movies, the Seltzer Freeberg heinous crimes against cinema came out, the disaster movie, epic movie, Meet the Spartans, all that stuff. After that kind of happened, then superhero movie came out. Jimmy, you were just saying superhero movies, and I was like, superhero movie. The movie called Superhero Movie came out, and that was a slight breath of fresh air, because if you didn't know this, it was written and directed by Craig Mazin, who's now a famous for his script writing, right? But
would hate our show.
Would hate our show. But Superhero Movie, when that came out, the thing about that is they created their own original superhero and original villain for it. It's an actual superhero movie that they layered in spoof jokes for. Wow. Is it the best movie ever? No, but it is very funny, and they tried to make a real movie, and that was a nice breath of fresh air from that horrific run of movies that happened after that. And Craig Mazin is just a name that comes up a lot in these circles. So, like, when his name started coming up as this like amazing writer that is doing incredible things and like for HBO and all this, I was like, the superhero movie guy, him.
Well,
Like,
what happened with him is it's all from podcasting. He became such a big name.
yeah.
So that's why Jimmy and I started this podcast, because we hope to follow in his footsteps.
Right. Well, he also did I think scary. He did Scary Movie 3, I think, too. He didn't direct it, but he wrote on Scary Movie 3. He might have directed the next one. I can't remember.
And then he ended up in the Hangover world. So he did Hangover,
2.
Yeah. Was there a third Hangover?
Yeah.
I think he did that too. I think he did and then not to do the Craig Mazin show. Then he did like one of those gosh, what's that Snow White and the Huntsman kind of thing?
Oh, okay.
I think that was his leap. He like did the sequel to that. And then he did like
Winter's War, I think it was called.
Yeah. And then he did like Chernobyl or something like that. You know,
Hey, right now it's completely different. But if anyone if you ever get a chance, superhero movie is actually attempting to do what the 90s did. And that's why it's better than, the other ones that were coming right before it.
I mean, because then you even get movies like Mystery Men and The Specials or something like that.
Sure,
Not really spoofs, but
they don't break the fourth wall.
They don't break the fourth wall, and they don't make fun of themselves quite as much. But they're kind of, I don't know what to say they are. I guess they're just comedy movies about superheroes, but they're not necessarily. They have spoof elements, but not spoofs. So they're kind of somewhere else in the chain.
No, I agree. It's a difficult genre, right?
Yeah.
Breaking the fourth wall is a messy business, and like Jimmy said, if you do it wrong right at the beginning of the movie, you're cursed for the rest of the movie.
Yes.
But if you do it right, then you're free to do whatever the hell you want.
Except you also have to make a movie. You're free to do any of the jokes you want, but you have to make you have to make a movie.
Yeah.
So it's funny, Zombieland almost does it. Like
a little bit.
Because it is voiceover, he is commenting on what's going on. It's almost doing it. It's like right on the verge of this. You can see where this and that share some DNA.
Do you remember when the other guys came out? I remember Adam McKay said a good quote where he was like, you have to make 80% a real movie and then fuck up the 20% left.
Oh, I like that.
And so like that's what he tried to do with like his films with Will Ferrell was you have to make Days of Thunder first, and then 20% is Talladega Nights.
That's good.
So
yeah. Yep.
Oh, you want to talk about nonlinear dual timeline?
Yeah. So just super quick on this, because I get this.
Yeah.
This is something when I, do some script consulting myself. I see a lot of people trying to do nonlinear stories, and they're trying to do a Save the Cat beat sheet for a nonlinear story, and it's really difficult. I think what this one does, this one's more of a flash forward that lingers in some ways. That's what I'll call it. It's like when you have that opening scene and it says, "Let me show you how I got here," and then you get to it at some point, but it kind of goes away. This is one like that kind of we revisited a couple times, and then we intersect with it pretty early. Like I think it might be the 50-minute mark or something like that we actually intersect.
It's 64 minutes.
64.
That's when the rewind happens, right?
So
So
So about the midpoint-ish.
The midpoint.
I mean, a little later than the midpoint. Because how long is this movie? About like hour 45, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like 148. Yep.
So a little later, the one thing I would suggest when I see these, because if you truly have a nonlinear dual timeline, my suggestion for people is to actually outline them separately. Like do the two stories separately. Like literally if I was just going to do this story and I was just going to do this story, and make an outline that has twists and turns and beats and drama and all that stuff all in two different outlines. Because and I'm not saying that's what this is. I'm going to put a little asterisk by this for a second, or put it off to the side, because what I see people do sometimes with this is they're like, oh, there's a flash forward. So instead I'm going to write, let's say they're doing a Save the Cat beat sheet. You could do anything, Truby, whatever method you do, your own method. They say, let's do a Save the Cat beat sheet, but I'm going to mix up the beats. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, the setup is going to come after the midpoint and the catalyst is going to come. But once you do that, it totally defeats the purpose of what a Save the Cat beat sheet is really trying to do, and what a Save the Cat, without going in a long-winded, you can read my book to figure that out. But without essentially what it's trying to do, it's trying to get you to empathize with the character and live life through their eyes, right? So you're worried if they're going to die, you're worried if they're going to catch the guy, you're kind of, it's this whole thing where you worry about what's going to happen, where you're living life through them for a brief period of time. But when you start mixing things up, then you have to ask yourself, well, what are you, it's not going to work. The alchemy of it is not going to work. The questioning, like the question you might, are they going to live or are they going to die, might go away because it's all mixed up. So it doesn't work as well. So my suggestion when I see people write these stories is to at the very least, even in the flashback story, like if you're going to have a flashback story, I would rather, in this case, it's a flash forward story, I think. And then we really tell a flashback. Give a question in both of the stories. Like in one story, it might be, how is he going to find, it's kind of the Kill Bill of it all, right? How is he going to find, I can't remember the guy's name.
Francis. Ajax.
Okay. So there is a question. There's a driving spine. There's a hero goal obstacle stakes. The hero Deadpool, the goal to find the guy, the obstacles, all the bad guys, all the, even the X-Men in some ways. And the stakes are revenge stakes or something. We get the idea that there's personal stakes. They're not clearly defined. On the other story, it's more of like the love story, the cancer, the how am I going to overcome? And it sort of becomes that. It's like, and that's the question we want to know answers to. We want to see the answers of, what happens to Vanessa? What happens to Vanessa and his love in some ways? Does it survive? That's what's kind of at stake in some ways. Is his mission going to work? How is it going to turn sideways? There's still questions. There's still a spine. In both of these, we have things that we're living through him. In one case, we're living through the superhero version. In the other case, we're kind of living in his ordinary world version. Mm-hmm. But they both have drama. When I see this go wrong in a lot of scripts I look at, and Jimmy, I'd love to hear your take on this, is the flashbacks or the flash forwards, they don't have those questions. They don't have those dramas. Sometimes they just fill in blanks we didn't need to know, or fill in blanks that could be filled in other ways. Sometimes they're just exposition. So just make sure that if you're doing these, both of them have the elements of story as they go through. There's questions, there's twists and turns, there's things we need answered on both tracks, so to speak, of your dual timeline, nonlinear storytelling.
Yeah, my side of this on so a couple things. Yes, Jamie, I see it all the time too. I think we do a more extensive job breaking this down in the Pulp Fiction episode and the Memento episode, where the nonlinear structure plays heavily into the story. And I'm not saying it doesn't play heavily here, but so what I see a lot is people just doing non-linear for the sake of non-linear. Like there's no reason to do it other than they think it's cool. And it seems like they have it there because they don't have confidence in the linear story. And they haven't done the work to earn the beats linearly. And so to your point, Jamie, to everything you're saying, they're definitely not doing that, what you told them to do. But the other thing is, I wish I had the Pulp Fiction and Memento structure in front of me to speak to it more. But I bet if you track this linearly, it wouldn't be as resonant. And I think what we definitely learned in Pulp Fiction and Memento is that the non-linear nature of it, when these major moments and these choices, these meaningful choices, and this escalation happens for the audience experience, because right, the audience experience is the focus, not when it's non-linear. How is the audience experiencing the story? It's more resonant non-linearly than it would be if it was told in order. And I think that's when you realize that telling your character's journey is more emotionally impactful non-linearly, that's when you do it, right? That's the reason to do it.
In this case, also, the reason to do it here in this specific case is we want to introduce the audience to Deadpool himself first. Otherwise, you have kind of a jerky guy falling in love with a woman,
Right.
and we don't get to Deadpool until really deep into the movie.
Right.
So you want to establish once again, it's the tone thing. You want to establish what Deadpool is and who he is first, right?
There's also the fourth wall aspect. I think it works better telling it backwards than it would. Also, I'm not sure, but Wade himself doesn't really do any fourth wall. It's Deadpool that does.
It's just Deadpool, right?
Yes.
Because in the comics, the healing factor makes him insane.
Okay.
It affects his mind. Yeah.
So it's motivated then.
Yeah.
They never really touched on it in the movies, but that's why he can see the fourth wall, is because he's nuts.
I mean, trying to imagine this movie where it's just Ryan Reynolds like doing Ferris Bueller kind of things before he becomes Deadpool, it seems odd. It would just I'm not sure that it would work as well. So to your point, I think you have to introduce him like telling the story. Like, I'm narrating the story, and we're also going to catch up to where I am right here in real time.
Yeah. He's still a normal person with like a snarky attitude at the beginning, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you guys have anything else on that point?
No.
Nope.
Cool. You want to talk about comedy character archetypes?
Yeah, this is mine. So we've done this in a couple episodes, and when I looked at it, it came to mind while I was watching, and I think most of it tracks. So I'm gonna go through it and see what you guys think for the answers. So this is 6 comedy character archetypes. This comes from a guy named Steve Kaplan's book, The Comic Hero's Journey. He also has another book called The Hidden Tools of Comedy. They're both good. We've referenced them on the show multiple times when we've done comedies, and they basically just deconstruct how to make stories funny without maybe being you're not Mike Myers, but there are ways to tell jokes and deliver comedy that are the strategies that these comedians are using. They're just doing it intuitively. And so one way is to start when you're coming up, you have a blank page, you want to have a comedy. You're like, well, who's gonna populate my story world? Well, one way to start is to just like play with archetypes, right? This is a brainstorming tool. It's not about like retroactively fitting your characters into this. It's more about like, I need to film my comedy with funny people. What should I do? This could help you. So they all represent comedic slices of our shared humanity, is what he says. They're all parts of a whole picture of who we are and what makes us as people funny. They don't need to have all of these. They can have just some of these, and some stories that we've tracked have more than one of each of these. The first 2 are a little similar, so it gets a little confusing, and I'm not sure that the first one is represented in this movie, but here we go. The first of the 6 comedy character archetypes is the fool. They're naive. They're someone unintelligent sometimes, but they're not always unintelligent, but they're always naive. Examples: Wayne and Garth are the fools in Wayne's World, Harold and Lloyd in Dumb and Dumber, Bill and Ted in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Ben Stiller in Tropic Thunder, Kevin Kline in A Fish Called Wanda. He's a skilled assassin, but he's a complete idiot. Is there a fool?
Dopinder, maybe?
I was gonna call Dopinder the next one.
So okay.
There's another one that's similar.
TJ Miller's character?
I think Weasel is kind of the fool.
Kind of a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but I'm not sure if this one tracks here. The second one is the innocent. Rookies who haven't been around the block. They're new to something important in the story world. Things need to be explained to them. Diane in Cheers, Steve Carell in 40-Year-Old Virgin, Mathazar in Galaxy Quest. And yeah, I think Dopinder is innocent.
He works for that.
I think he tracks, right?
Yeah.
Like Deadpool's trying to tell him, like, kill him.
Right. Yeah, he's trying to teach him how to do it.
Trying to teach him how to be Deadpool. Yeah. The third one is the voice of reason. They know the truth, or at least they think they know the truth, but they can't get others to listen to them.
Colossus.
Often, yes, I would say Colossus, right? Sometimes they're the hero. So Patches O'Houlihan in Dodgeball, Carl Weathers in Happy Gilmore, Agent K in Men in Black, and yeah, I think the voice of reason is Colossus, right? He definitely,
Easily. That's the odd couple of the two of them, right? He's a
definitely.
straight and narrow, like law-abiding superhero that believes in life and order. Right.
Yes. The next one is the animal. They're physical and direct. They follow animal and primal urges. Sometimes the animal is the hero. Ed O'Neill in Wayne's World, John Belushi in Animal House, Danny McBride in pretty much any Danny McBride role, Melissa McCarthy in Bridesmaids. I definitely think there's an animal. Who do you guys think is the animal
I mean,
here?
that could be Deadpool. I
That
don't
could be
know.
Deadpool, right?
Yeah.
I think Deadpool's something later. You'll hear. I
Okay,
think
okay.
Angel is the animal.
You think
In
who?
the Angel is the animal in this script.
Okay.
She's just physical and there's nothing to her except her animal primal nature, right? Like,
Gotcha.
she's
Okay.
grunting. It's all about her physicality. I think it works. The Desired, they have the power to transform other characters who desire them. Chris O'Dowd in Bridesmaids, Cassandra in Wayne's World, Sigourney Weaver in Ghostbusters, it's Mary and Something About Mary. I mean, there's definitely, of course,
Vanessa.
Yeah.
Vanessa, right?
Vanessa.
Seems pretty obvious.
This is the one, the trickster, the indisputable comedic archetype. They live by their own rules. They draw outside the lines. They're usually in disguise, and if not, they're helping other characters take disguise.
I mean, you just described Deadpool. yeah, right.
Yeah. So there we go. So I think that if you're writing a comedy and you're not sure where to start with your characters, these 6 comedy archetypes, the fool, the innocent, the voice of reason, the animal, the desired, and the trickster are a good place to start. And you can play with them, you can subvert them, maybe you make a hybrid. I think it's interesting that every single time we use this, we find that they are represented in the movie, right? In the comedy movies we're breaking down.
Applying those even to the Deadpool sequels would be perfect.
Oh, yeah. I wonder who's in that. Yeah.
Cable and then Wolverine and all, like they all fit a certain box there. It's perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it gives you a nice variety. Like it said, it's a shared kind of like pie of what makes us funny as people. So, yeah.
It's a little bit of, hey, if you're not a comedian, you can maybe almost get there.
Yeah, no, it informs the next topic, which it sets you up for being able to tell different types of jokes and not just the same type of joke. When you have 6 different characters who are funny for 6 different reasons, that sets you up to be able to do a lot of different types of jokes.
Let's talk about that. Funny filters, right?
Yeah.
The 11 types of jokes.
Okay, so I brought this
before.
While it sounded like Jamie, it sounded like you were feeling the same thing. When I was watching this, I was like, I feel like the funny filters we've done, like I'm seeing them left and right. And so I thought it would be fun. So the funny filters are The Onion did an article. The Scott Dickers, the founding editor of The Onion, he did an article once where he basically said every jokes they come in these 11 specific categories, and he found like common denominators between all the articles they were posting, and then he used article headlines to show how each is a different type of joke. So I thought it'd be funny. We did this on Wayne's World and we did this on The Princess Bride, and we were able to find that there were all 11 different types of jokes represented multiple times. All 3 of us were throwing out different ones, and it's just the reason this is important. And Jamie, I'd love to hear your examples too from consulting. Is when I read comedies, often the problem isn't that they're not funny, which is great. It's always a nice surprise. Oh my God, this is funny. Often the problem is there's no variety in the comedy because usually people are really good at 1 or 2 types of jokes, and that's all we get, right? So the problem is you get 30 pages in and it just feels like the same 2 jokes over and over again for the next 60 pages because they're not doing the work to try to come up with a variety. They're not doing like we talked about with the Harold Ramis, where Harold Ramis comes to set and they got the 7 and 8 alt jokes for each one of the jokes. So I would encourage people to when you're filling your page with jokes, to maybe test out alt jokes, and this is an exercise hopefully to help you get those different types of jokes.
I think what's interesting about this movie though, and this is the tricky thing. I think a lot of the comedy comes from the running commentary and just the constant snark and stuff like that. But within that commentary, he's using many of these things, right? He's using these joke types. Whereas I think a lot of scripts that people write that have one type of joke, they almost need to try out different vehicles of jokes. You know what I mean? It's like instead of just doing somebody says a snarky thing, somebody says a snarky thing, somebody says a snarky thing, there's all kinds of other things that you can use, like sight gags and slapstick and all kinds of things.
In this movie, Deadpool is the source.
He's the source.
Yeah,
I
have a feeling. Right, I have a feeling in
Yeah.
comparison to the other two episodes where we did this, Wayne's World and Princess Bride, most of our answers to these are going to be literal lines from Deadpool.
They have to be, because like we said earlier, is the other characters are in a real movie.
That's a good point. Yeah, because
some of the things that break the fourth wall, like the fast forwarding or something like that, and seeing something
that's still from him though, because he's narrating.
Again, it is kind of inspired by whatever magical narration he's doing.
But I still think there's something instructive about going through and showing how even
totally.
Deadpool is not one joke over and over again. You know?
His lines, some are using some techniques and some are using other techniques.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, that's what I was hoping to demonstrate. So I'm gonna go through. I'll read the concept, Jamie, if you don't mind reading the headline, and then Bob, we'll test your
Why is it no Jamie too? Don't put this all on me.
All three of us can say the jokes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put it all on me.
It's
Come
funny,
on, Bob.
It's funny. There's so many jokes, but they are sometimes hard to label.
Yeah, like I'm having trouble with the first one right now.
And just like the archetypes, sometimes you almost, not that we're going to do it this way, but sometimes it's easier. Like if you know all of them, if you read through it once and then you go back and do it, and then because then you can categorize a little better.
Yeah. But
still,
we'll try. We'll try to do it justice. Anyway, okay. One last quote from the writer of this, the editor of The Onion, or the OG editor. He says, "I've never encountered a joke or something that was funny that did not employ one of these 11 literary devices." So here we go. Number 1 is irony. Intended meaning is opposite of literal meaning.
And the headline is, and these are Onion headlines. The Onion headline is, "Alcoholic father disappointed in pothead son."
The first thing that comes to mind is the hard spots quote. Is like, if you don't leave her alone, you're going to find out I have some hard spots too. That didn't come out right.
That didn't come out right.
It didn't come out right. Yeah.
I think of like the actual credits make me think of this. Like when they're talking about Ryan Reynolds and I can't remember the
God's
joke.
Perfect Idiot.
God's Perfect Idiot.
Yeah.
There's irony there. Okay, number 2.
Even him saying that, do you think Ryan Reynolds got this far on his acting talent?
On his acting talent.
Right. There's irony there because he's Ryan Reynolds. Right.
Number 2, comedic character acting on their personality traits.
And the Onion headline is, "Mom thinks you'd enjoy restaurant she can't remember name of right now."
Help me with this one, guys. I'm trying to think.
These are most of his, I think.
I was going to say, I'm thinking so specific, and I'm like getting caught up there.
Yeah, I think most of his are comedic character acting on personality traits.
Because everything he says is basically he's constantly like obsessed with being horny,
right?
And pop culture references.
Yep.
Right, and calling people nicknames.
Like all of those jokes,
calling people nicknames, and then extended like barfing out of expletives.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of got a slight Tourette syndrome about him with
right.
Cock gobbling Muppet fart or something like that. In
the face of danger, he can't stop making little snarky jokes. I mean,
that's his.
There you go.
That's the answer to this one. It's a weird one, but
I mean, this was like 90% of his probably dialogue.
Yeah.
Reference common experiences that the audience can relate to. I said to myself that I forgot to change. Let's rename this relatable.
Okay, so the headline is, Day chalked up as lost by 10:15 a.m.
Could this also go to references to things that the audience would know about? Like when he says Stewart or McAvoy, these timelines are so confusing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's referencing something that the audience can relate to because
that-
they've seen those movies.
Those might be because we have meta later. Those might be meta.
Oh,
We do
really?
have meta, yeah.
You don't think they also would qualify here though? Because I don't know, it's relatable. I don't know.
I'm sure he has a bunch of these. I'm horrible at remembering on the spot like what he said. Because I'm sure he has like 50 of
Like
these.
when he loses his hand and it's growing back, and he's like, "Now, if you leave the room, it's going to look huge in this hand."
Right.
That feels-
that's definitely.
that
but
feels
it's also, yeah, that also comes in the next one.
I'm not
So
looking ahead. I'm going.
No,
I'm just
yeah.
looking
So the
right
next
at the
one, so they're a combo, right? So,
Yeah.
and we've said that before. Like jokes can be more than one thing. The number 4 is shock. Surprising jokes typically involving sex, drugs, gross out, humor, or swearing. What's the Onion headline, Jamie?
Yeah, the Onion headline is "Holy shit, man walks on fucking moon."
I need Jamie to say that again. You don't have to say that again. So yeah, there you go. To your point, Bob.
That's this movie.
Yeah.
It's
like
the blowjob drink, the blowjob gag.
Have you have you ever seen 127 Hours, sawing off your own arm and then leaving a middle finger?
Yeah, exactly. And then we see the gross out. Yeah,
him touching Colossus's crotch. It's like, Daddy,
like so many of these.
Right, like there's so many of these. It's I think this is actually where the dividing line of people who either love this or hate this too. I would say that this
roll their eyes at this.
I know, like the people that hate it, I feel like this is where it loses a lot of them, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is, yeah.
Number 5, parody, mimicking a familiar character, trope, or cliche in an unfamiliar way. What's the headline, Jamie?
The Onion headline is Al Gore places infant son in rocket to escape dying planet.
Okay. Trope, cliche. Could him questioning if the mask is muffling his voice, would that be a trope, like the trope of characters wearing masks and having their voice being normal in movies? And then him,
I think one that's funny is him wearing a mask of Hugh Jackman.
Yes,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Also, the sexiest man alive, Hugh Jackman magazine.
Right.
There's probably also some sword stuff in here as well. Like a character like him and the swords and what he does with them and stuff like that. It's probably in there.
I feel like also him just taking damage because he knows he can survive it, thus like going against the trope of of a hero dodging bullets.
That's a great
he's absorbing bullets.
Yeah, I mean that couldn't be more specific to Deadpool.
To this, you can avoid the cliche because he can just take it. Right.
Hyperbole, exaggeration to absurd extremes.
Yeah, so Onion headline, magnanimous boss, king of kings, allows employees to watch World Cup in office.
I think, Jamie, I don't want to correct you, but I think that was magnanimous.
Magnanimous. What did I say? Magnanimous.
Magnanimous. I was like, is that
magnanimous sounds like a more grand word, though.
Yeah.
Magnanimous. That sounds like a villain in the Road Warrior franchise.
It actually does. That would be great.
Lord Magnanimous.
Once again, exaggeration. I feel like whenever that's like part of Deadpool's personality, right? Like everything he says
a lot of stuff like that. Yes,
most of this is dialogue. You're right. This is all dialogue coming from
which is
Ryan
not
Reynolds.
the way that the other two
functioned, right?
Yeah, it was like we were pulling random things, like Jamie said, sight gags, and I stumped you this one.
I mean, if I'm trying to think of ones that aren't verbal. Would the excessive nature of the opening gunfight count as a weird visual hyperbole?
I mean, definitely
Would
with the bullets and the numbers on the bullets and the yeah,
would that
for
count?
sure.
I think that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Definitely.
Jamie, you got anything for this? I'm drawing a blank a little bit.
Yeah,
It's hard.
my memory for dialogue is, unless it's like the three things I remember, is gone, and we've already used up the three things I remember. I should have had this list while I watched.
I mean, okay, him talking to the guy that's in charge of the basically torture facility. I forget the character's name, but that whole conversation where he's constantly exaggerating how that guy is a pedophile and he should be far away from schools.
Yes, that's a great one.
He's constantly exaggerating just how dangerous this guy is to kids.
Yeah, stay away from playgrounds.
Stay away from playgrounds.
Yeah.
It's absurd how he's doing it.
That's good.
That
works. Wordplay, puns, rhymes, double entendres. What's the headline, Jamie?
Onion headline. What? I don't even know what that word is. Frito-Lay? Is that a word?
Look at the joke. The joke is
cuts off diplomatic relations with Snackistan. I see. Frito-Lay cuts off diplomatic.
I'm more amused by James.
Well, after I misread the previous word, I was like,
diplomatic as a word is
diplomatic relations with Snackistan.
I got one if you guys
go for it.
So the first one that immediately came to mind is another dialogue one, which is Deadpool says, is there a word for being afraid and angry at the same time? And Weasel says, frangry? Yeah, which that's one of the ones in the script, because I was trying to find it without watching the movie again. In the script, the line is there a word for being frightened and angry at the same time? And it was like, frightened, like it's weird, like it's not as funny.
Putting balls in holes when they're talking about skee ball. The hard spots quote once again fits this one too.
So there you go. That's three right there.
There's three right there, right?
Yep. Okay, number 8. Analogy, comparing two disparate things.
The Onion headline is man approaches unfamiliar shower knobs like he's breaking wild stallion.
This is harder than I thought it would be.
I got one.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't know if I
have one for this too.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, go for it.
I can't remember the exact words, but he says like, I'm going to do to you like Limp Bizkit.
It's the music in the 90s. Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
That's good. I'm not sure if this tracks or if this is if I'm reading it wrong, but he says, I've been traveling to exotic places, Baghdad, Mogadishu, Jacksonville.
I think that works. For some reason, I'm trying to fit the bedazzling line in there.
I love that.
Comparing jeans to a bedazzled. Yeah.
Okay. Number 9, madcap. Crazy, silly, nonsensical.
The Onion headline, wheelchair basketball player stunned by thunderous slam dunk.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the T-Rex joke when he breaks his
he breaks both of his hands.
And they're wobbling down, and he said the dinosaur world always feared the T-Rex.
Right. Then whose litter box did I just shit in?
Yes.
Right. And then he gives that look, I guess. Crazy wacky. I mean, it's like everything he says is crazy, wacky, silly nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of combos is what we're thinking.
I think a lot of this can be mashed up. A lot of these can be mashed up like 3 of them fit one thing.
Yeah,
like
one thing.
For Madcap, I'd also say when he gets stabbed in the head, he sees cartoon animals.
Yep.
Stuff like that. The fact that he was wearing a mask under his mask that would obstruct his vision for a joke later on in the movie is absolutely nonsensical. Like the Hugh Jackman mask would literally make him worse, his vision worse, and he did it as a joke. You know, the joke of him recognizing Bob.
That's great.
Yeah,
Bob.
Yeah, that's really silly. Yeah, that's enough, right?
That's plenty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meta humor, jokes about jokes, or jokes about the idea of comedy. Onion headline.
And I think this one also could be jokes about movies, jokes about superheroes.
Yes, I
you know.
agree too.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Onion headline. It is sadly unclear whether this article will put lives at risk.
God, that's good. That is so good. Well, as I said, Stewart or McAvoy, these timelines are so confusing.
Yeah.
You ever seen 127 Hours? You know,
Mhm.
The credit sequence. I mean, the whole
credit sequence.
My
Calling Negasonic Teenage Warhead Sinead, stuff like that.
my favorite is when he's doing the fourth wall within the fourth wall. A fourth wall break inside a fourth wall break. That's like 16 walls.
Well, it's like 16 walls.
Doesn't he have like commentary on exposition and stuff like that in the beginning of the movie? And,
I think so, yeah.
And kind of points out like act breaks and things like that.
And they say like when he gives
sounds like a franchise.
When Weasel gives him the card for the Agent Smith, he said it might further the plot.
Right. Weasel also says it sounds like a franchise. Right.
It sounds like a franchise. Yeah.
One of my favorite jokes in the movie that does not come from Deadpool is the introduction to Negasonic and Colossus when he's like when he says school blowing up builds character.
Right.
He's referencing the meta nature of the other movies where the school keeps getting destroyed.
Yeah, because he even says some things. Kind of big house. I guess we could only afford 2 X-Men. Or
Yeah.
Then he has the one where it's like
he also calls her. It references Alien 3 because she looks like Ripley.
Right, Ripley.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the one that you know at the time was hilarious was like, maybe I'll get a super suit. Maybe not green. You know.
Right. That was in the trailer, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, there's
so,
so much meta humor.
So
We could just sit here and just recall the whole movie.
11, misplaced focused. This one's tough for me. I'm not getting it, even though there's a lot of description. Attention is focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah. The Onion headline, there's 2 of them here. Really fun toy banned because of 3 stupid dead kids. I like that one.
God, that's fucking great.
That's a good one. Onion headline. Yesterday, I accidentally hit a kid with my car. It wasn't serious. Nobody saw me.
That feels like a Deadpool line right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I didn't have any.
I'm sure there's some of these in there. It's just recalling which ones and that.
It's Jamie, you'll appreciate this because this is all Anthony Jeselnik stand up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every joke Anthony Jeselnik makes is pretty much misplaced focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's definitely examples in Deadpool. I don't want to sit here in silence while I think.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But anyway,
yeah.
I thought it would be fun to try.
No, definitely.
I think we found many. I don't think we found some for every category, but that doesn't mean that they're not in there. So if you're out there,
this is harder because it's pure dialogue.
Right? Yeah.
In this movie, it's pure dialogue.
It's kind of weird because there's so many jokes too. Like that's part of it too. I mean, you think that would make it easier, but when they're coming at you like every second, it's like, you know, my mind's filled with like 10 of them, and that's about all I have room for in my mind. You know, so,
as someone who recalls visual information way better than anything else, I feel like I could do these 11. Like we did this for other movies, I'd be way better at it. You know, if we did this for like Robin Hood Men in Tights or Spaceballs or whatever.
When we did it for Wayne's World, we were coming up with a variety
of them. With Deadpool, it's like trying to remember Ryan Reynolds quipping stuff both in voiceover and on screen, and it's like I can't recall that for this. So
we tried.
No, I think we did okay.
Yeah.
But I think the greater point is that you can have your jokes come from anywhere. Like in this movie, it literally proves what we were saying earlier. It's coming from Deadpool himself. The world is saying he is not.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. So there you go. Okay, handshakes. Let's talk about that.
This is mine. So talked about this in a couple episodes, most recently in Oppenheimer. Oppie and all his friends. So handshakes are something that I've been playing with, and I'll continue to refine it. So forgive me for not having like a polished way of explaining it, but they're basically a shortcut for creating running relationship bonds and running gags, depending on the relationship. And it's just like a specialized repetition. We talk about repetition a lot. It's a specialized repetition that helps the audience track the progression or regression of a character and their relationships. And I mean, that's when you're sitting there, again, you're sitting at the computer at the blank page and you're trying to figure out how you tell these mini relationship stories within your overall bigger story. A shortcut to get us right back into what we know and care about within this relationship is to give us something familiar. And that's why I call it a handshake. It's inspired by Josh and Billy's secret handshake in Big, and the repetition of how the movie uses their secret handshake to show how their relationship is progressing and then regressing and then once again growing again. One of my favorite examples is E.T. and Gertie Be Good. She teaches him how to say be good, and then he repeats her, and then E.T. says it to Elliot and Gertie. Like when he learns to talk, those are his first words, be good, be good. And she's like, I told him. And then in the end, he says, when he's saying goodbye, he says, be good. And that's how we feel a deeper connection to this relationship. And that's, once again, how we're able to easily emotionally respond to how that relationship is changing. And so I think we just listed all the jokes, but to me, this is where the movie's storytelling and craft really shines. There's so many handshakes, there's so many relationships, and they're all from Deadpool's perspective. So I'm going to go down and break them down. This is my book report. All right. The Wade and Vanessa relationship, there are 4 handshakes. And that's what's great. They're not on screen a lot together. And this is why every time they're on screen, it feels like so like meaningful. Number 1 is the interlocking pinkies. When they meet, instead of shaking hands, they shake pinkies. And then later in the movie, they're shaking pinkies again upon the proposal. And then in the end, when they reconnect, she holds out his hand and they shake pinkies before they have their big kiss. So that's one. Number 2 is the dueling sob stories. This one's my favorite. The first one is the lovers meet and they share, instead of like having a wholesome exchange,
Right.
they share their dueling extreme sob stories of whose life is worse. And
I lived in a dishwasher box. You had a dishwasher?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And in the middle beat of that, after Wade gets his cancer diagnosis, she says to him, you win, your life is officially way more fucked up than mine, which is picking up that handshake and continuing it. And then in the end, when they reunite, Wade brings back the sob story handshake, and he's like, I live in a crack house now with 12 people. We sleep together to keep warm. We share everything to save money, including condoms. And she's like, so you're saying you live in a house?
Right.
So they just, that's number 2. Number 3 is the jigsaw pieces that fit together, dialogue repetition. Wade says, your crazy matches my crazy. We're like 2 jigsaw pieces, weird curvy edges, but they fit us together. But fit us together, you can't picture that. You can't see the picture on top. And later in the alley, when Vanessa thinks that Francis is Wade, she says to him, she brings back the handshake. She says, I knew it was you. Weird curvy edges, like a jigsaw puzzle. But it turns out not to be him. But I think that handshake mention is really what makes it the dagger in the heart. Like we instantly reconnect to that special moment when this was established. And the 4th one is Wham.
I was about to say Wham.
The Careless Whisper. Yeah. He talks about Careless Whisper. Talks about how he's gonna pull it out and have that playing at an important moment, and then it does in the end when they have their big kiss. He brings it out on the phone. Right. So that's 4 just for Wade and Vanessa. Wade and Francis have the "What's my name" handshake that just plays out over and over, and finally is reversed in the end. He says, "What's my name?" and he says, "Who fucking cares?" and blows his brains out. But every time they're interacting, it's brought up, it's brought back, and we feel everything with their relationship a lot easier because it's sort of like our compass to their relationship, right?
And it's like the power struggle between them. I mean, he spells out his name with dead bodies, right?
Yeah,
of his own henchmen. So
perfectly, yes.
Yeah.
The 3rd one is Wade and Weasel, with Weasel betting against Wade on the Deadpool. So every time they're together, they bring it back. Oh man, like I bet against you again, and then he finds out he's like he can't be killed, and he's like, oh, I'm down, definitely not gonna win because I bet against you again on the Deadpool. So it's a nice instant. It instantly brings us back and makes us think about all their moments together in the bar. And I love that the handshake is in the bar. I think that's extra clever. Like, you know what I mean? It reminds us of all of their scenes together very efficiently. The next one is Wade and Dopinder. Wade gives him a crisp high five instead of payment for the cab ride. So like in the end of their first scene together, Deadpool is getting dropped off and he says he doesn't have any money and he's like, how about a crisp high five? And then in the finale, when Dopinder drops them off, Dopinder says, I presume a crisp high five. And he says, for you, buddy, 10. So, and it shows how the story is, their relationship is growing, right? Now he's giving him 10. I mean, it's so simple, but this is craft. Wade and Al have the dueling IKEA references every scene together. They're bringing up the MNEs and she's going to put together this. And he's like, well, why don't you get one of these? I prefer this. And it's just all IKEA furniture references.
There's also the drug stuff for Al.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's another one I missed. So there's two there. Wade and Colossus have Colossus's X-Men recruiting efforts and Wade's consistent avoidance, right? To be a hero or not to be a hero debate every single time they're on screen together. That's the focus of their relationship, is him trying to be like, you can be a hero, and him being like, I don't want to be a hero, you know? So that's a handshake in my opinion. Wade and Negasonics. Wade mocks her for being a stereotypical angry teen, only capable of brooding silence or saying something mean. Right. And Negasonics mocks Wade for being old and cool. And then in the end, she's like, it's all right, you're cool. And I love the script says, with the tiniest of smiles, you're cool. Deadpool says, I am, oh my God, that was not mean. So that relationship, that was our easy.
There's actually an arc there. Yeah.
That was our easy way to track how they're growing and changing through that repetition. So, I mean, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Deadpool relationships. And that's why I feel like each one of them is special and fun. And it's really through these handshakes. So it's just a really...
I think you could also argue that there's like a slight handshake between Deadpool and the audience with the voiceover.
I
think there is, like, we kind of grow with him over time. He also keeps revealing too much about himself to the point where our relationship with him is uncomfortable. Like at the beginning, he's not necessarily telling us about his like active sex life. Then we learn about how much he masturbates, how he masturbates, what him and Vanessa are going to do in bed, and finally it ends on a joke about him and Melissa, or him and Vanessa. Sorry,
him and Vanessa.
You know what they're going to do tonight.
Yeah,
there's a relationship with the audience that we're hearing way too much information.
Way too much. TMI.
TMI. Right.
So TMI handshake.
Right.
No, but there was something that I didn't track it. There's something going on with the maximum effort repetitions repeated 3 times throughout the story. Maximum effort when we meet him and he jumps into the, you know, to the big opening scene starts with him saying maximum effort, and then later throughout the movie in 2 other big moments he says maximum effort. So there's something there with himself, right?
Yeah.
Pushing himself. So
and shaking himself,
right? With his tiny little hand.
Right. Premise pretzels.
This one's mine too. This is, we've been calling it recently when we bring it up, the whiteboard within the whiteboard. We did my favorite one recently is we did Batman Returns. So if you like this concept, listen to the Batman Returns and all the different whiteboards within the whiteboards that it does. Jamie, you've been tweeting about this concept recently. You want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think it goes a lot to what you were saying with handshakes. I was thinking a lot of has been what I've been tweeting about, because what happened was what inspired those tweets. Occasionally when I do script consulting, and when somebody calls me up, sometimes it's, and for some reason lately this has happened, but I've had 3 times where people have messaged me because they were about to go in production and they had scripts they wanted me to read. So to juxtapose those scripts I was reading and giving notes on for development and stuff like that, compared to the ones that I get from new writers and people that are learning the craft and still absorbing all the information and things like that. The biggest difference, the most startling difference that, and it was a reminder when I read the two kind of back to back, the ones going in production have their problems, but one of the things that really stands out from the ones going into production is how experienced writers and professional writers, I'll even go beyond experienced to professional, because I think some people are experienced but maybe don't learn certain lessons along the way, are just oozing setup payoff. It's like every single thing is setup payoff. So those handshakes are all examples of setup payoffs.
Right.
They're like relationship moments. There's a setup that pays off, and then maybe it pays off again in a different way. And the payoff in a different way is when we start talking about premise pretzels. It's like there's a setup, there's a payoff, then there's another payoff that comes from a different angle, and then it folds back on itself, and there's another payoff, and it kind of goes almost in reverse. Like you start seeing payoffs from all different angles, and that's what premise pretzels are, is kind of when something is set up in one way, and then its mirror image is almost paid off in a different way. And ones we've talked about on the show are like the Predator. The Predator's invisible in the beginning of Predator, but then later Arnold is invisible to the Predator by putting mud on himself. That's one of the popular ones. And we've talked about a lot of them, but it's kind of like that reversal, that looking at something that happens and then almost taking it in reverse. That can be a premise pretzels, looking at things from a different angle.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones that's random but from the show is Ghostbusters Afterlife, when they capture that ghost muncher that is a ghost who eats metal.
Right.
And then they're in the jail and all of their equipment is in a jail cell, and like a generic version of that will there be like crack the lock, right? Pick the lock to get in there. But instead they reach an object in and open the trap and let Muncher out to then chew the bars.
Yep.
So the captured ghost gets released to intentionally chew on metal, and that's how they get out of the situation. So that's like a perfect example. But from this movie, simply put, Jamie, you recently said this and I've been using it to explain it. One setup, many payoffs. And Deadpool, I'm just going to talk about one whiteboard, which is the plexiglass capsule. It's the tank, the oxygen deprivation tank. In the script, it's literally called the punch bowl, but the movie never says that. So I'm just going to call it the punch bowl. So this has 5 payoffs. So the setup is when we learn what it is. Then the first payoff is Ajax then uses it to torture Wade and mutate his cells. Then there's another payoff.
And him his appearance.
What'd you say?
And cause his appearance.
Yeah, and cause his appearance and his powers.
Right, yeah.
Number 2 is Wade then steals a match from Angel and lights a match within the tank, and that's how he escapes the facility. So that's payoff number 2.
The match also had a setup and payoff too.
And the match had its own payoff, setup and payoff. Number 3, Ajax then uses the tank to hold Vanessa hostage and bait Wade using the same tank that he made Deadpool in. Number 4, Wade throws his sword into the tank, and we have a bunch of little fun with Vanessa using the blade to help her escape it. So that's another payoff. Then my favorite one, then it becomes a not so secret weapon. When the construction site is collapsing, Wade puts Vanessa back in the tank, and it's what saves her from the fall and the construction debris. So it's one object, one idea, one setup, and we get 5 major payoffs, and one is like to kill someone, one is to save their life. It's just used in a bunch of different ways, in a variety of ways. And like you said, Jamie, that mirror image, that reflection. But I think it's a great example of craft. And
I think also you could probably throw in something about the facility itself. He gets cancer, and he's offered this chance to become a superhero, and then we learn from that it's actually he's going to be some sort of like a corporate drone, and then from that he actually does get powers. It's not just torture, and then from that, like
the facility whiteboard itself,
it keeps branching out, and it keeps twisting in on the audience. Like, oh, it's actually this. Oh, this is how he actually gets it. the thing that the thing that ended up trying to kill him ended up making him effectively immortal.
Yes.
And also ruining his life. Yeah. The mirror image thing. I think that's
the whiteboards in this movie. If we did more of them, I almost did one just for the swords and all the different creative ways it uses the swords. There's just so many. They definitely did this idea generation that we talk about to try to recycle ideas and do something fresh with the things that you already have in your movie. Jamie, you've said it many times, and I love this concept that in the best scripts, everything is either a setup or a payoff, right? It's never only used once.
I feel like one day we'll do like an Edgar Wright movie. And I think that those are like stone cold setup and payoffs. There's not a moment in Hot Fuzz that isn't a setup or a payoff. This is not at all. Every moment, every line is a setup or a payoff. Yeah. I think that's our entire talking points, right? That's all of them, right? Do you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
No.
I just want to say, if anybody, we got one new question from a listener since last time recording, so saving that for the right moment. If anyone has questions, reach out. I love reading the emails. Writers Blockbusters Podcast at gmail.com. You can send them to.
And remember, the questions can be about screenwriting. They could be, I think they could be about anything. I think that'd be fun.
Sure.
Ask Jamie what kind of tractor he owns. I don't. Do you even
what
know?
else is in that box with the Ninja Turtles?
What other comics does he have?
The Snake Eyes, no dialogue G.I. Joe comic.
That's the one. That's the hot one. Better jump on that quick.
Ask us to rank 90s spoof movies or something. That, I don't mind stuff like that. Yeah, it can be really sophisticated questions. You can ask us silly stuff too. Just nothing offensive, please. I don't want to open it up that.
Can we tell everyone what we're doing next? Since I see that.
Definitely. I mean, the reason we're doing it, we said we wanted to do. It's Deadpool and Wolverine is crushing at the box office, so we're doing Deadpool, and then next we're doing Logan.
Yes, I'm really excited about that, and that one too is so different.
So different.
Wow, different.
And that's exactly that's what the new movie's also playing off of, right? The tonal difference between the two characters, the odd couple nature of them, the buddy cop thing, right?
So we're gonna do Logan next for anyone who's interested. Yeah, I'm excited.
I think that's gonna be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think that's everything, guys.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Bob Rose, and thank you for listening to Writers Blockbusters. If you'd like to financially support the show, please consider joining my Patreon. I've been producing the podcast for several years completely out of pocket, and I'd like to keep producing it ad-free and no longer at a loss. If you'd like to help, head on over to patreon.com/Bob Rose Sucks. That's right, Bob Rose Sucks. And if you want the one and only Jimmy George to help polish up that writing project you're kind of struggling with, head on over to scriptbutcher.com. As a listener, you already know he's the best there is, scriptbutcher.com. You can also support the show by simply sharing it or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate both. Thank you for listening, and see you next episode.